At first, it doesn't look like war. There is no mushroom cloud, no city flattened, no wall of fire racing through the streets. Just a single flash, far away on the horizon, barely visible through the morning haze. People in nearby towns barely notice it. Some think it's a thunderstorm, some think it's a military exercise, some don't look up at all, but in that moment, something far more dangerous than a bomb has just been unleashed, because the missile did not strike a city, it struck a nuclear power plant. And what comes next is not an explosion that ends in seconds. It is a disaster that unfolds for years. This is the story of what happens when America's most powerful machine becomes its greatest weakness. A normal morning. It is an ordinary morning in the United States. People wake up to coffee machines humming, radios playing softly, phones vibrating with notifications. Parents rush children into cars, trucks move along highways, factories wake up with the sun. Somewhere deep inside a reinforced concrete complex, a nuclear reactor hums quietly. It has done so for years, providing electricity to millions, lighting cities, powering hospitals, running data centers, holding civilization together invisibly. And because it has always worked, no one really thinks about it until today. The impact. At 8:41 a.m. local time, radar stations pick up something unusual, a fast-moving object, low altitude, silent. No sirens yet, just a sudden warning on a screen. And then, a violent shock wave slams into the outer structure of the nuclear facility. Steel bends, concrete fractures, windows shatter in nearby towns. Inside the control room, alarms erupt like a scream. Red lights flash, warning systems overload. The plant automatically scrams, shutting down the reactor, or at least, it tries to. But the damage is already done. Power lines feeding the cooling system collapse. Backup generators kick in. Some fail to start. Water stops circulating through parts of the core, and suddenly, the reactor is no longer being cooled properly. No fireball rises into the sky. Instead, something far worse begins. A slow, silent climb in temperature. The reactor that won't cool. Inside the reactor vessel, temperatures rise minute by minute. Fuel rods, packed with uranium pellets, begin to overheat. Water surrounding them boils violently, turning into steam. The rods, once safely submerged, are now exposed. Without cooling, the zirconium cladding reacts with steam, creating hydrogen gas. And hydrogen in enclosed spaces does not wait long. The first explosion rips through part of the containment building, not nuclear, chemical, but powerful enough to tear open steel doors. And now, radioactive steam begins escaping into the atmosphere. It rises silently. No smoke plume that looks dramatic on camera. No burning skyline. Just invisible death carried on the wind. The moment it crosses the line. Inside the reactor, the core begins to melt. Fuel rods deform, collapse, sink into each other like wax under flame. Temperatures exceed 2,000 degrees Celsius. At this point, the reactor is no longer just damaged. It is melting down. The molten fuel, corium, burns through steel, concrete, and safety layers designed to withstand earthquakes and hurricanes. But not this. Engineers inside the control room watch data scrolling past in horror. They are no longer trying to save the reactor. They are trying to delay the inevitable. Because once corium escapes containment, nothing can stop it. And beneath the plant, groundwater waits. The invisible fire. When molten nuclear fuel meets groundwater, there is no ordinary explosion. There is a violent steam blast. A massive surge of radioactive material erupts into the air. Now, the disaster is no longer contained. Now, it belongs to the atmosphere. Winds carry radioactive particles across states. Rain clouds form. And soon, radioactive rain begins to fall hundreds of miles away from the impact site. Farmers in distant fields have no idea their crops are now poisoned. Children play outside beneath a sky that looks perfectly normal. Milk becomes contaminated, Water becomes unsafe. Soil becomes toxic. And still, most people do not yet understand what has happened, because radiation does not look dangerous. It looks like nothing at all. The first human cost. Within hours, emergency teams arrive. Firefighters, engineers, National Guard units. They wear protective suits, but some areas are already too radioactive for any protection to matter. They walk into zones where a human body can survive only minutes. Some will not realize they are dead until days later. At nearby hospitals, people begin arriving with strange symptoms: nausea, vomiting, dizziness, burning skin, but no visible burns. Doctors struggle to diagnose what they cannot see. And while the nation watches television footage of a damaged power plant, the real disaster is unfolding silently inside human bodies. Cells are breaking apart. DNA is unraveling, and there is no cure for exposure once it has occurred. Evacuation. Finally, authorities issue evacuation orders, a 10-mile radius, then 20, then 50. Highways jam instantly. Families flee with whatever they can carry. Cars run out of fuel. Buses break down. Some never make it out. Others flee in the wrong direction, toward radiation, not away from it. Because radiation maps lag behind reality. Entire towns become empty overnight, not destroyed, just abandoned. Dogs wander streets. Cars remain parked in driveways. Laundry still hangs on clotheslines, like a frozen moment in time, except the air itself is lethal. The zone. Within days, a massive exclusion zone forms, a dead region in the middle of America. No buildings burned, no rubble, no visible scars. But no one can ever return, like Chernobyl, like Fukushima. But now, on American soil, homes are left behind forever. Schools, churches, playgrounds. A silent civilization locked behind fences. Not because it is destroyed, but because it is poisoned. The nation reacts. Energy markets panic. Electricity prices skyrocket nationwide. Rolling blackouts begin in major cities. Factories shut down. Hospitals switch to emergency generators. And suddenly, this is no longer a regional disaster. It is a national crisis. Stock markets plunge. Insurance systems collapse under claims too large to pay. Real estate values near the zone drop to zero overnight. Entire states feel the shock. And the rest of the world is watching. Because if this can happen in America, it can happen anywhere. War or accident. In Washington, the question becomes urgent. Was this an attack? If a foreign power is suspected, this is not just an industrial disaster. It is an act of war. And unlike bombing a city, this is a strike that poisons the land itself. Nuclear power plants suddenly become military targets, not for what they produce, but for what they contain. And now, every reactor in the world is no longer just infrastructure. It is a potential weapon. Cliffhanger. America is now facing something it has rarely known, a permanent wound on its homeland, not from invasion, not from occupation, but from contamination. And this is only the beginning, because what follows is not just a disaster, it is a transformation. The death that comes later. Most people imagine radiation kills instantly. It does not. The real horror begins days, weeks, months later. Hospitals begin filling with patients who don't look injured at all. No burns, no blood, no wounds. But inside their bodies, their immune systems collapse. White blood cells vanish. Organs begin failing silently. Doctors call it acute radiation syndrome. Hair falls out. Skin blisters from the inside. Bone marrow stops producing blood. And then infections appear. Not because bacteria is stronger, but because the body is no longer capable of fighting. Thousands die not in explosions, but in hospital beds, slowly, quietly, unseen by cameras. Children of the zone. The most devastating impact does not arrive in the first year. It comes in the next generation. Babies are born with deformities, Organs fail to develop correctly. DNA is damaged in ways medicine cannot repair. Cancer rates spike dramatically. Leukemia, thyroid cancer, brain tumors. Doctors begin noticing patterns. And then the truth becomes undeniable. The land itself is sick. Every breath, every drop of water, every grain of soil carries a memory of the disaster, and the children pay for it, not because of mistakes they made, but because of where they were born. How long does it last? Some radioactive isotopes disappear quickly, others remain deadly for centuries. Cesium-137, half-life, 30 years. Plutonium-239, half-life, 24,000 years. That means long after governments collapse, long after borders change, long after languages evolve. Parts of America will still be radioactive. Cities erased not by bombs, but by time itself. Entire regions marked on future maps. Do not enter. Not because of ruins, but because the ground itself kills. The new American landscape. After the disaster, America is no longer the same nation. Millions are displaced, new refugee cities form. Entire communities uprooted and scattered across the country. Property laws collapse in contaminated regions. No one owns poisoned land, no one can sell it, no one can return. A new class of Americans is born, nuclear refugees. They carry no flag, no identity tied to place, only the memory of a home they will never see again. The economic freefall. Nuclear power provided nearly 20% of America's electricity. After the disaster, dozens of reactors are shut down overnight. Not because they are damaged, but because the public no longer trusts them. Energy shortages follow. Electricity prices triple. Factories shut down. Unemployment surges. Entire industries collapse. And the US dollar weakens for the first time in generations. Global markets react violently. Because America is not just a country, it is the engine of the world economy. And now, the engine is failing. The political earthquake Congress enters emergency session. Presidents give speeches, commissions are formed, investigations begin. But no one wants to answer the most dangerous question. Why were nuclear plants allowed to become targets at all? Why were they not hardened like military bases? Why were they not protected like weapons? And now the public demands something radical. Shut them all down. The same technology that once symbolized clean energy now represents invisible death. Political parties fracture. New movements rise. Some demand total abandonment of nuclear power. Others argue it is still necessary to survive climate change. The nation is torn between two fears: radiation and darkness. The military rewrites. War. The U.S. military studies the attack, not just as a disaster, but as a weapon. A new realization emerges. You do not need to nuke a city to destroy a country. You can poison its land instead, and that changes everything. Power plants, dams, chemical factories, pipelines, all become strategic targets. War no longer means destroying armies. It means destroying infrastructure that civilization depends on. Future conflicts will not be fought only with bombs, but with contamination, with collapse, with long-term denial of territory. The battlefield is no longer just cities. It is civilization itself. Global shock waves. After America's disaster, every nation reassesses its nuclear infrastructure. Germany accelerates shutdowns. France fortifies reactors like military bunkers. China builds underground plants. Russia increases secrecy. Some nations abandon nuclear power completely. Others double down. Because now, nuclear energy is no longer just an environmental debate. It is a matter of national survival. And the world divides into two camps: those who abandon the atom and those who turn it into a fortress. The psychological aftermath. But perhaps the most lasting damage is not physical, it is psychological. A generation grows up knowing the air can kill, the ground can kill, the water can kill. Trust in technology fades, trust in government collapses, trust in safety disappears. People no longer fear war. They fear what remains after it, because what happened was not a moment. It was a transformation, a shift in how humanity understands vulnerability. Could it happen again? Yes, and that is the most terrifying part. There are over 400 nuclear power plants in the world, many located near cities, near rivers, near borders. Every one of them is a potential battlefield. And in a world moving closer to global conflict, they are no longer just energy facilities. They are strategic weak points. The question is no longer, can this happen again? The question is, where? The silent weapon. A nuclear bomb destroys a city in seconds. A reactor disaster destroys it for centuries. One is loud, the other is quiet. And in modern war, silence is often more deadly than fire. If nuclear war ever comes, the most devastating weapon may not be the bomb itself, but the poison it leaves behind. Because when a reactor is hit, the war does not end. It continues in the soil, in the water, in the DNA of generations yet unborn. A warning. This story is not science fiction. Every element in it is real. The reactors exist, the isotopes exist, the physics is known. The only unknown is when, and whether humanity is wise enough to prevent a future where civilization is not destroyed by fire, but erased by contamination. Because sometimes, the most dangerous explosion is the one you never see.